Now, just as ceasefire aid operations are swinging into action in Gaza, one of the most important aid agencies in the Strip is being told by the Israelis that it must close down its offices by Thursday. UNRWA is accused of being infiltrated by Hamas. The Israelis say its neutrality is compromised beyond repair and has insisted that it will not back down over its plan to stop its operations. Well, joining me now is the Director of Communications at UNRWA, Juliette Touma. Good evening. Thank you for being with us. So Israel is insisting it will not back down on this. The deadline is Thursday. What do you intend to do?
Thanks for having me, and good to see you again, Mark. Look, we plan to stay and deliver until we cannot. And as you said, we are the largest humanitarian operation in Gaza. If this ban is implemented, then this very fragile and long-awaited for ceasefire is at a very big risk to collapse.
When you say you're going to stay and carry on until it's not possible, what would make that not possible? Some sort of enforcement action even by, Israeli forces on the ground? What do you expect to happen?
We're not in the business of making any predictions or expectations. What we're focusing on is to continue to deliver humanitarian assistance to people in Gaza and also to keep our services open in the rest of the occupied Palestinian territory. That includes also East Jerusalem.
Right, but it is possible, is it, that later this week your activities would have to come to an end?
If the bill is implemented, then yes, that's a likelihood. You see, we've not received any official communication from the government of Israel on how this bill that was passed nearly 3 months ago, how it would be implemented.
So what is the situation regarding what Israel has said? Because they're adamant that Hamas has infiltrated UNRWA, that a number of UNRWA staff took part. There were various investigations. But Danny Danon, in a letter to the UN Secretary General at the end of last week, says they're not moving from this. UNRWA has to close. It is compromised. Its fundamental obligation to impartiality and neutrality is beyond repair. So, it doesn't sound as if they're going to back down.
So the letter, which we've seen, of course, because it was widely circulated to the media on Friday, ordered UNRWA, a United Nations agency, to close down its premises in occupied East Jerusalem and cease its operations. That was the content of the letter. This is contradictory, you see, Mark, to the privileges and immunities that the United Nations has. It's contradictory to international conventions that the State of Israel has signed on, according to which it is obliged to respect and protect the United Nations premises wherever they are.
Right. And are you going to court, to law over this at all?
We are not, but we understand that there are two Israeli human rights organizations that have gone to the Israeli High Court of Justice, and we will see what happens with that.
Right. Do you understand why the Israelis are doing this? Their suspicions about the organization have been well aired over the months. Do you understand why they are doing this?
I'm not entirely sure that there is any justification to ban a humanitarian agency doing the work that we're doing in Gaza, providing 2 million people with food, giving shelter to hundreds of thousands of people, giving education to boys and girls in the occupied West Bank. I'm not sure there's any justification. You said it yourself, Mark. We've done investigations, we've done independent reviews, and banning UNRWA is adding to the suffering of the Palestinian people in both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank.
Right, but I mean, the Israelis clearly have their views and their position on this. What would be the consequences, do you think, if you could not operate in Gaza going forward from Thursday during this ceasefire?
Well, first of all, it's exactly that. It's what will be the fate of this very fragile, long-awaited for ceasefire, banning UNRWA, which is the agency that brings in most food, most medical supplies, that has the largest outreach inside Gaza. That is likely to jeopardize the ceasefire, and there is a likelihood and there is a big risk that this ceasefire might collapse as a result.
Right, so you're basically saying that the other agencies can't fill the gap which would be left in the job you do. The Israelis themselves couldn't fill the gap in the job that you do?
In the absence of UNRWA from across the occupied Palestinian territory, there is no other United Nations agency, by their own acknowledgement, that can do this work. Technically, operationally, it cannot work. So we're left with one option, and that is the State of Israel as the occupying power, which is by law must facilitate the welfare and the assistance and the services to the population it's occupying.
And just to be clear, why do you think that the ceasefire would be jeopardized if you couldn't do the work that you want to do?
Well, because a big chunk of the deal that eventually led to the ceasefire was about the facilitation of humanitarian aid. And right now, on the other side, those receiving the humanitarian aid and delivering the humanitarian aid is UNRWA. We have more than 5,000 people working with us on the ground in comparison to the next UN agency that has just over 200 people. We have the reach. We have also something that's quite underreported, which is the trust of the community that we're serving. So who will distribute the food? Who will give the medical care? We provide, as an example, 16,000 medical consultations every single day through UNRWA doctors and nurses that are in UNRWA clinics.
And I mean, we've only got a minute left, but can you persuade the Israelis, guarantee to the Israelis that your organization is not currently still, as they put it, infiltrated by Hamas?
Look, we are a United Nations agency that abides, according to international reviews, by the humanitarian principle of neutrality.
OK, Juliette Touma, I appreciate you coming on
Thank you.
Today. And the scenes of the return to the north are extraordinary, and we'll see what happens later in the week. But thank you very much for coming on. Thank you.